Today's story takes you deep into the heart of the Galactic Council, a powerful assembly of species that has ruled over the galaxy for eons. But when humanity steps up, asserting its rightful place in the cosmos, everything changes. We follow Ambassador Harris and his team as they navigate treacherous politics, secrets, and the shocking truth behind Earth's hidden power. As tensions rise and alliances are tested, will Earth remain a pawn in the galaxy's vast game, or will it become a force to be reckoned with? Don't miss the battle that could reshape the future of all humanity. The stakes have never been higher. What will Earth's place in the galaxy be? Could humans truly stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful forces in the universe? Share your thoughts and predictions below. We'd love to hear your theories, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting tales. Let's continue exploring the unknown together. The room at Nexus Station was vast, its grandeur unlike anything the human delegation had ever experienced. The ceiling stretched high into the dark unknown, with shimmering lights that pulsed like distant stars, reflecting off the polished surfaces below. The walls seemed to breathe, their surfaces shifting with alien designs, morphing and swirling with colors that couldn't be understood by human eyes. As Ambassador William Harris stood from his seat, every alien eye in the room locked onto him. His presence commanded attention, not because of any physical grandeur, but because he had endured years of being belittled, underestimated, and ignored. His heart heavy with decades of struggle, Harris's eyes spoke the truths his voice had been too weary to share. The other species, blue-skinned Thalaxians, insectoid Irishans, and even the floating gas creatures who hovered silently in the air, paused their hushed conversations. They had been waiting for Harris to speak, but none of them anticipated what would come next. "I've heard enough," Harris said calmly, his voice cutting through the murmur of whispers that filled the chamber. His gray hair and weathered face spoke of a lifetime spent fighting for equality, for respect, yet today, there was something different in the way he stood. It was not frustration but a deep, resolute calm. Earth and all human colonies are withdrawing from these talks. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. The Council, made up of 7 powerful alien races, had always considered humans to be a young, naive species, still struggling to prove themselves worthy of galactic respect. They had expected nothing more than subservience from Earth, an obedient, insignificant species working under the protection of the Council. But Harris's words shattered that illusion. Speaker Zerketh, a tall, imposing being covered in purple scales, let out a snide laugh, if it could be called that. With 4 arms, his movements were smooth, fluid, and with a casual wave of his mandibles, he dismissed Harris's statement. "Ambassador Harris, please sit down," Zerketh said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We all get frustrated sometimes." But Harris didn't sit. Instead, he picked up a data tablet left carelessly on the table by Zerketh. The sleek, alien device hummed to life in his hands. On the screen, a confidential document blinked, revealing secret plans marked with the Council's official seal. Harris raised the tablet high enough for all to see. "This doesn't look like frustration to me," Harris said, his voice low, but steady. "It looks like you're planning to steal our worlds while pretending to be our allies." The room fell silent, the tension so thick it felt as though the air had stopped moving. The other Council members, who had been arguing moments before, were now frozen in disbelief. The Irishans, with their segmented bodies and insect-like eyes, blinked in confusion. The floating gas beings in the corners of the room now shifted to a deep red, signaling alarm. Zerketh's purple scales darkened with embarrassment. He stammered, trying to recover the situation. "That is simply a planning exercise," he said quickly, but the damage was done. Harris pressed on, his words like the calm before a storm. "We have been patient. We have been respectful for 20 years. Humanity has asked for equal membership in the Council for 20 years, and for 20 years, you have found reasons to delay." He didn't raise his voice, but each word was like a hammer strike against the silence that enveloped the chamber. "Humanity will no longer wait for your approval. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from all agreements with the Galactic Council." The alien representatives looked stunned, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others murmuring amongst themselves. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans weren't supposed to have the courage to stand up against them. They weren't supposed to have the strength to leave. As the finality of Harris's words set in, the human delegation stood in unison, collecting their materials and preparing to leave. Their movements were deliberate, composed, and precise, as though they had rehearsed this moment countless times. They had planned for this, waiting for the perfect opportunity to make their stand. Unitas, the insect-like representative from the Arcturon Federation, spoke up, his voice clicking through his translator. He was a tall creature, his many legs moving restlessly under the table. "Your colonies depend on our protection." But Harris's gaze never wavered. He had heard it all before, the subtle threats, the condescending remarks. He was done listening. "We have learned much from our time with the Council," Harris replied, his voice unwavering, "but we've also learned something more important: how to protect ourselves." Harris pressed a button on his console, and a quiet whir filled the room. The screens throughout the council chamber flickered for a moment. Then, without fanfare, the entire data about Earth, about the human colonies, disappeared from the council's databases. The screens went dark, as if everything related to humanity had been erased from existence. The hum of the room shifted, as if the galaxy itself had just exhaled in stunned silence. "We will protect what is ours," Harris continued, his voice calm but firm. "If the Council wishes to establish new relations with humanity in the future as equals, they may contact us. Until then, all diplomatic channels are closed." Without another word, the human delegation walked toward the doors, each step filled with purpose and defiance. As the doors closed behind them, the sound reverberated in the chamber, like the final note in a song that had played for too long. The Council was left behind in stunned silence. As the human delegation continued their task of packing their materials, the air in the council chamber became increasingly tense. Every movement was deliberate, methodical, as though they had all rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. There was no rushing, no panic, only quiet, controlled defiance. Ambassador Harris remained calm, his mind already focused on the next steps. After years of being pushed to the edge, humanity had finally made its choice. The time for subjugation was over. The alien council members, each from vastly different species, watched in stunned silence. Zerketh, the purple-scaled, four-armed leader of the council, looked especially unnerved, his previously confident posture now faltering. The Arcturans, with their segmented bodies and sharp, clicking voices, exchanged looks of confusion. The floating gas creatures in the corner, who communicated through color shifts, now flickered between hues of deep blue and red, a mix of concern and frustration. One of the Arcturon representatives stood up, his antennae twitching in agitation. His voice, clicking harshly through the translator, cut through the tense silence. "Unitas," he said, his insectoid eyes narrowing as he addressed Harris. "Your colonies depend on our protection. You cannot survive without the Council's aid." The words, though spoken with an air of superiority, seemed to have no effect on Harris. His response was composed, deliberate, his gaze never leaving the speaker. "We have learned much from our time with the Council," Harris replied, his voice calm but resolute. "But we've also learned something more important: how to protect ourselves." Harris pressed a button on his console. The hum of the station shifted, the room growing eerily quiet. Within seconds, the holographic screens around the room flickered to life, revealing Earth's official withdrawal from the Council's influence. The screens, previously filled with data about the human colonies and their military and economic contributions, blinked out, one by one. The data had vanished. All of it. A vast digital landscape, filled with records, treaties, and agreements, was now entirely wiped from the Council's archives. The Council members, including the Arcturans, who had prided themselves on controlling Earth's movements, now found themselves staring at blank screens, utterly stunned. The galaxy's vast knowledge of humanity and their territories was gone. Harris had done what many thought impossible: he had severed humanity's ties with the Council and erased their presence from galactic records. "We will protect what is ours," Harris said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "If the Council wishes to establish new relations with humanity in the future as equals, they may contact us. Until then, all diplomatic channels are closed." The human delegation moved in perfect synchrony, their actions controlled, their steps measured. There was no sign of fear, no trace of hesitation. They knew exactly what they were doing: humanity was taking back control. As they made their way toward the exit, the sound of the doors sliding shut behind them felt like the closing of an ancient chapter. For the first time, the humans had stepped into the galactic stage on their own terms, free from the oppressive weight of council manipulation. The chamber, now left with its bewildered alien occupants, was filled with a tense silence. Zerketh and the other council members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. For decades, they had treated humanity like a mere pawn in their galactic game, and now, the human race had declared itself a force to be reckoned with. Their sudden exit left the council reeling, uncertain of what would come next. Back on Earth, in the secure underground command center beneath Geneva, the human leadership was already preparing for the next phase. Ambassador Harris knew this would not be the end. The council would not let go of their former allies so easily. But humanity had learned from its years of subjugation. Now, the gloves were off. "Send the signal to Earth," Harris said, his voice now full of quiet determination. "It's time for Plan Omega." The massive underground facility hummed to life as technicians and military officers scrambled to initiate the next phase of humanity's independence. The entire planet was about to be notified of the bold step Earth had just taken. There would be no turning back. Harris had sent the message across the galaxy, but now it was time to bring Plan Omega into action. The signal would reverberate through every corner of the galaxy, a declaration of independence, a warning that Earth was no longer a puppet of the Galactic Council. The countdown had begun, and humanity was ready to face the galaxy on its own terms. They had no need for the Council's protection, and they would not beg for their approval any longer. The future of Earth was now in their own hands. Deep within the cavernous underground command center in Geneva, the air hummed with a mixture of anticipation and urgency. The facility was a fortress of secrecy, nestled beneath layers of stone and reinforced metal, hidden from the prying eyes of the Galactic Council. The walls, lined with advanced technologies, reflected the blue glow of holographic maps and data projections. The hum of machinery reverberated in the air, a low but constant reminder that everything humanity had worked for was now in motion. Seated at a long table were some of Earth's most influential figures, military leaders, top scientists, strategists, and diplomats, each one bearing the weight of the decision about to unfold. Their faces were hard to read, masks of professionalism hiding the uncertainty and resolve brewing beneath. They had known this day would come for 10 years. The preparation, the secrecy, the countless sleepless nights, all for this single moment. Admiral Diane Powell, the embodiment of calm and composure, stood at the head of the table. Her uniform was crisp, the insignia gleaming under the stark lights. Her short gray hair framed a face marked by years of service, her expression unyielding, but with a quiet strength. She glanced at the countdown timer on the large screen in front of her, 3 seconds left. With one final glance at the room, she spoke. "Plan Omega is now active." The words cut through the tension in the room, resonating like a thunderclap that echoed throughout the facility. At the precise moment her command was given, every system, every protocol, and every hidden piece of the plan that had been set in motion for so long clicked into place. The timer ticked down to 0, and the very foundations of humanity's hidden defenses began to stir. Across the globe, hidden bases, some buried deep beneath mountains, others on isolated islands, came to life. In places as distant as Mars and Europa, defense systems powered up with a low, rumbling hum. The lights of the once dormant bases flickered to life, casting long shadows over the vast, cavernous rooms as teams of scientists, military personnel, and engineers sprang into action. The workstations lit up with real-time data streams, calculations, and mission-critical information. In a secure lab nestled beneath the icy surface of Europa, scientists scrambled to activate the shield generators that had been developed in secret. These shields, based on alien technology, had been reverse-engineered from years of observation and study of the Galactic Council's weapons. And now, they were humanity's most critical asset. Meanwhile, in Arizona, Dr. Alan Murphy, the chief scientist behind Earth's most classified technologies, arrived at the command center just in time. His wild brown hair was unkempt, a clear sign of the countless sleepless hours he had spent working. His lab coat was stained with coffee and traces of alien materials, but his eyes were sharp with clarity. He stepped into the room, his footsteps echoing against the metal floor, and immediately assessed the situation. "The shields work better than we expected," Dr. Murphy said, his voice steady with excitement and awe. "They can stop any weapon the Council has shown us so far." A hushed murmur passed through the room as the weight of his words settled in. The team had been working tirelessly on these defense shields, and now, the results were exceeding expectations. The shields were not just a defense, they were a game-changer. A barrier that would protect Earth from the advanced weaponry of the Galactic Council. Admiral Powell nodded, her face grim but satisfied. "Activate them all. It's time for silent departure." In a series of synchronized movements, the team began the activation sequence for Operation Silent Departure, the first step of Plan Omega. Ships, long hidden in the deepest parts of space on moons, in asteroid fields, and even on the surface of Mars, began to power up. The cloaking systems that had been installed in these ships years ago flickered to life, rendering them invisible to the Council's advanced surveillance. The vessels began their quiet departure, one by one, slipping out of their hiding places with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The first ship to leave Mars base was a military transport vessel, its sleek, angular body designed for rapid deployment. It blended into the background of the red planet's barren landscape, its silhouette nearly impossible to detect by any standard sensors. As it silently cut through the atmosphere, its engines hummed with a barely perceptible sound, the ship making its way toward Earth's outer defense perimeter. In the command center, screens flickered as data from each vessel came through, confirming the success of the initial phase. Ships were moving, and the galaxy would soon witness the might of Earth's defenses, long underestimated by the Galactic Council. But there was no time to waste. The Council would soon realize something was wrong. They would know that Earth was no longer playing by their rules. It was only a matter of time before they mobilized their own forces to retaliate. But now, humanity was ready. "Silent departure has begun," Admiral Powell confirmed, her voice strong, filled with the authority that had guided her through countless battles. "Prepare for the next phase." In the underground bunker beneath the mountains of Geneva, the lights flickered as the final sequences of the plan were initiated. The shield generators, spread across Earth's secret bases, hummed louder now, the energy flowing through the system, linking up with the new defense satellites positioned in Earth's orbit. Every piece of technology, every hidden vessel, every weapon that had been beyond the Council's reach, was now activated. Humanity was no longer just a player in the Council's game, they had become the game-changer. The fleet of human ships, now fully mobilized, began their silent departure from their secret locations, heading for the farthest reaches of human territories, undetected, invisible, and ready for anything. But the Council had no idea that their power was now in human hands. The Galactic Council sat in a grand hall on Nexus Prime, its towering spires casting long shadows over the enormous chamber. The walls were lined with shimmering holographic projections of galaxies, star systems, and resource maps, all emanating a soft blue light that bathed the room in an eerie, distant glow. Around the table, the various alien representatives sat in silence, their eyes locked on the large central screen, which displayed the words, "Emergency Session." For 2 long weeks, the Council had waited for a response from Earth, and now, it was time to act. The once easy relationship between humanity and the Galactic Council had soured, and the sudden withdrawal of the humans had left the Assembly members shaken. This wasn't a mere diplomatic disagreement, it was a fracture in the very foundation of galactic diplomacy. And it was a fracture that could not go unpunished. Zerketh, the purple-scaled, four-armed Speaker of the Council, sat at the center of the table, his voice cutting through the silence with a sharp, metallic timbre. "The humans have completely withdrawn from Council space," he declared, his voice vibrating with anger. "They must be punished for this." His 4 eyes narrowed as he stared at the assembled Council members, each of whom had a vested interest in humanity's resources and technological advancements. The room was thick with tension as alien delegates from every corner of the galaxy, from the insectoid species of the Arcturon Federation to the floating gas beings from Vexor, exchanged uneasy glances. The Council was divided, and it was clear that the once united front was now beginning to splinter. A large Arcturon delegate, his long segmented body twitching with agitation, raised one of his 4 limbs. "We cannot simply act impulsively," he rasped, his voice like the clicking of metal. "We must consider the consequences. The humans were key to the defense of our colonies against the Promaxian raiders. Their withdrawal will leave us exposed to threats we cannot handle on our own." His mandibles clicked sharply in frustration, but his words carried a sobering weight. In contrast, Zerketh was resolute. His purple scales flushed a deeper shade of violet, a color that indicated his growing irritation. "We've tolerated humanity's insolence for far too long," he hissed. "Their actions show weakness. If we allow them to continue unchallenged, other species will begin to think they can defy us as well." But the youngest council member, Trell, who had yet to fully grasp the politics of galactic diplomacy, spoke up cautiously, his blue skin almost glowing under the lights of the chamber. His eyes, wide with concern, scanned the room. "We need them more than we realized." He paused, his voice quiet yet firm. "Their technology, their resources, they are too valuable to lose. We may think we can punish them now, but we cannot ignore the balance they bring to our economy and defense systems." The council room grew still at his words. Zerketh, whose arrogance had previously been unshaken, now looked to Trell with something akin to begrudging respect. He was right. The human species had contributed more than they had been given credit for, most notably in their strategic role in protecting Council territories from the Promaxian raiders, a notorious group of pirates that had long caused chaos in the outer regions of the galaxy. An uncomfortable silence lingered in the air as the council members processed the weight of Trell's statement. The realization that they were interdependent on human technology, military support, and resources was dawning on them. Without humanity's ships patrolling their borders, their defenses were now critically compromised. The Promaxians, whose attacks had previously been quelled by the humans' vigilance, had begun to strike again. Suddenly, the communication officer, a small, luminous creature from the Severan species, blinked urgently, drawing the attention of the assembly. "Council, we have an urgent transmission from the outer regions." The officer's voice trembled, her form shifting colors from blue to a deep orange, a sign of distress. On the screen appeared a live feed from a council mining station near the outer rim, a region once securely patrolled by human ships. The feed flickered, showing the aftermath of an attack. The mining station was in ruins, its exterior cracked and scorched, with smoke billowing into space. Promaxian ships, their jagged, black hulls resembling broken shards of glass, hovered above the station, their weapons still firing at the fleeing miners. The council watched in stunned silence as the destruction unfolded before them. The Severan officer continued, her voice barely audible, "The Promaxian raiders have attacked multiple council mining stations in this sector. The last patrol was human. We are vulnerable without them." The room erupted into a mixture of panic and disbelief. The Promaxians, who had been a manageable threat with human presence on the frontier, were now wreaking havoc in the Council's most vital sectors. The Arcturans, who had always prided themselves on their military might, now exchanged fearful glances. Their previous complacency was quickly giving way to panic. Zerketh's eyes narrowed, and his voice turned venomous. "This is an outright betrayal of our trust." His words echoed through the chamber. "We offered them protection, guidance, and now they leave us to face these threats alone. They will pay for their treachery." Trell, however, was no longer certain. His thoughts were clouded by the devastating images of the raided mining stations. "Perhaps," he ventured quietly, "it's not too late for us to reconsider how we approach this situation. We need to restore communication with Earth. We can't survive in this galaxy without them." Before Zerketh could respond, another report came in: more Promaxian raids. The scope of the problem was spreading faster than the Council could react. The once proud military fleets of the Galactic Council, though vast and powerful, were struggling to contain the raiders without the human fleets to help them. Zerketh let out a deep, frustrated hiss, his claws clashing on the table. "Send the fleet to Earth. Now. We will show them their place. They will regret this decision." The Council had made its decision. A massive fleet would be sent to Earth. The punishment was clear, a reminder of the Galactic Council's power and the consequences of defying them. Yet, deep within their ranks, some still feared what the humans might do in response, what they had already begun to build in secret. The Promaxians had created a galactic rift, and now, it was time to see if humanity had truly learned how to defend itself, or if it was simply too late to mend the fractured relationships within the galaxy. As the Galactic Council's fleet emerged from hyperspace, the cold void of the universe parted to reveal the vast, shimmering fleet of warships. Hundreds of massive vessels, gleaming in their polished, metallic exteriors, formed a defensive formation in orbit around Earth's solar system. The very sight of the fleet sent a shiver down the spine of anyone watching. These ships, equipped with advanced weaponry and shields, had crushed entire star systems in the past. It seemed like an unstoppable show of force. The commanding officers aboard the Council ships exchanged confident glances, certain that their mission to reclaim their dominance over Earth was all but a formality. As their ships continued to approach Earth's atmosphere, the tension aboard their command decks was palpable. Their sensors scanned the area at blank, no trace of any human fleet in sight. The humans, they thought, were isolated, helpless without the protection of the Galactic Council. But then, an unexpected anomaly occurred. The sharp, rhythmic hum of their engines was interrupted by a faint signal, the first disturbance in the vast emptiness of space. Suddenly, hundreds of ships that had been completely invisible to the Council's sensors materialized before their eyes. These ships were sleek, angular, and decidedly human in design, ruthless, efficient, and fully armed. A holographic display of Earth's defense fleet flickered into existence across the Council's command screens. The human ships didn't just appear from nowhere, they were hidden in plain sight, cloaked by advanced stealth technology, the very technology the Council had never seen before. The silent hum of their engines was like a predator stalking its prey, its proximity unnoticed until it was far too late. Their sudden appearance was enough to send shockwaves through the Galactic Council fleet. It was as if the galaxy itself had tilted on its axis. "Human ships," exclaimed one of the Council officers, his voice trembling with disbelief. The sight before them was something they had never expected to see. Earth, once considered a weak, isolated planet, had developed a military force capable of challenging their own. "This is impossible," another officer shouted, the realization dawning. They were never supposed to have this kind of power. Panic began to ripple through the Council ships as their commanders scrambled to adjust their battle strategies. The sheer audacity of humanity's readiness caught them completely off guard. The balance of power had just shifted. On Earth's flagship, Admiral Greg Martinez, the seasoned leader of the Earth Defense Force, stood at the center of the bridge. His gaze was unyielding, his posture straight, as if the weight of the moment only fortified his resolve. He stared out into space through the transparent command windows, his hands steady as they hovered over the controls. The Council's fleet was in full view now, their massive ships drifting toward Earth. But there was no fear in his eyes, only calm confidence. "Stand down," Admiral Martinez's voice cut through the tension, steady and resolute. He spoke not with arrogance, but with the confidence that only came from years of preparation. The Council ships, massive and intimidating, dwarfed Earth's fleet. But the humans were no longer the weaklings they had once been. "You have 30 minutes to leave our space," he commanded. His words, carried through the speakers to the officers aboard the Council ships, were like a forceful storm that tore through the galaxy's silence. No longer would humanity bow to their supposed overlords. Earth had risen, not just as a planet to be controlled, but as a sovereign power in the galaxy. In that moment, the bridge of the Earth flagship became a silent battlefield, one where only humanity's determination and technological prowess could speak. Martinez stood unmoving, as every Council officer stared back at him, uncertain, shaken by the audacity of his demand. The Council fleet, which had previously felt invincible, began to falter. Their vast numbers and firepower were no match for the resolve of a species that had been underestimated for centuries. The officers aboard their ships knew they were caught in a precarious situation. The humans had shown they could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest powers. Back on Earth, in the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Laura Grant watched as the holographic map before her displayed the retreat of the Council's fleet. The galactic invaders, once so sure of their dominance, were now turning away from Earth's space, their massive ships retreating in coordinated fear. Grant allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. Her face, usually calm and stoic, cracked into a small smile. "We are no longer their servants. We are their equals." It was the declaration of an entire species that had fought for its place in the stars. Humanity was no longer an afterthought, no longer the underdog. They were ready to take their rightful place among the galaxy's great powers. But despite their retreat, the Council was not done. A diplomatic vessel was already on its way to Earth, carrying the Council's new terms they hoped would bring humanity back under their control. But the humans stood firm. Ambassador William Harris, the seasoned negotiator who had lived through the Council's oppressive tactics, would not back down. "We don't seek to rule," he said firmly as he addressed the Earth leadership team. "We seek equality and partnership." "We won't be underestimated again," Harris continued, his voice rising with quiet conviction. The message was clear: humanity would not return to the fold as a subjugated race. They would only negotiate as equals. As the dust settles and the echoes of battle fade, Earth has proven to the galaxy that it will not be underestimated. What was once considered a primitive world has now become a powerful force, standing proudly among the stars. But this is only the beginning. The galaxy is vast, and new challenges await. Will humanity continue to forge alliances, or will new threats emerge from the far reaches of space? The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: Earth will fight to protect its place in the universe. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think will happen next? How will Earth's journey unfold in the galaxy? Thank you for joining us here at HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to keep up with the latest adventures. Until next time, remember, in a universe full of unknowns, humanity's strength is its greatest weapon.